bouton. Hi, Julien. Welcome. Did you wake up okay? You need to use your...
I'm okay, yeah, thanks. Thanks for the invitation.
How is your small social network you're working for?
So far, so good.
What's your role at Facebook?
I manage the platform partnerships team in Europe, so I work with software companies, developers, and the Facebook ecosystem.
And so Julien accepted to curate this session on the best of Europe?
It's actually the invasion of European super startups.
Because you think we'll have the next Uber coming from Europe?
Exactly, actually. I have the privilege and the opportunity at Facebook to work with a lot of companies in Europe, and we see a lot of successes in companies that people don't really know about sometimes, in crazy places like Serbia, like Belarus, Israel, of course, France. So we just wanted to bring some of these new entrepreneurs, new companies, mobile first, mobile only kind of startups, put them on stage and talk about what's happening in Europe right now. As you've noticed, with the IPO of King.com, with Supercell, with Waze, there are many, many cool new startups coming out. And so I just wanted to give you a preview of the next generation of European entrepreneurs.
This is awesome. Julien, thanks very much. The floor is yours.
I'm glad. Thank you, Loic. So I'm going to call right now on stage Alex from Hassel, Peter from Apollon, Branko from Nordius. If you guys could join me right now, that would be great. We also have Nicolas from BlaBlaCar. So we have French company, British company, Serbian company, a company from Belarus, and a company from Israel, Tel Aviv. Thank you very much. So I'm going to start with Alex. Alex, do you have a mic? So Alex, can you tell us who you are and what does your company do?
Oh, yeah. Hi, my name's Alexandra de Pledge. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Hassel.com, or Hassel, as they like to say in Paris. It's Europe's largest independent cleaning marketplace. So we match consumers with domestic home help.
When did you create the company?
We launched January 2nd, 2013, so we'll celebrate our second birthday this coming January.
How many employees?
Right now, about 35 full-time employees and a couple of contractors across 3 countries.
And you raised money from?
Axel.
Good. Thanks a lot, Alex,
Thank you.
for joining us. Branko from Nordius, who's also known as the Bill Gates from Serbia. That's his nickname in the industry. Branko, can you tell us who you are and what you do at Nordius?
Thanks, Julien, for giving me a nickname. So I'm Branko from Nordius. I'm a co-founder and CEO of the company. We do games. Some of you might know us by our title Top 11, which is one of the most popular sports games in the world and the most popular football management game, with around 5 million daily active users and over 100 million registered users. We are 160 people strong, 4 countries.
How many? Did you raise any money?
No, we're bootstrapped.
No VCs.
No VCs.
And Top 11 is a top 10 grossing app, I believe, worldwide on Facebook, iOS, Android.
Yeah, more or less, yeah.
Nice. Congratulations. Thanks, Branko.
Merci beaucoup.
Itai, from Lightrix, a company based in Tel Aviv and in New York. What do you do?
Hi, I'm Itai. I'm one of the founders of Lightrix. We published Facetune, which is one of the world's best-selling and top-grossing paid applications on mobile. We bring cutting-edge image processing technology to mobile, and Facetune is a portrait editing app, very high-powered, that enables people to achieve the same results as they would with Photoshop, etc., only without needing to know how to work that stuff. We're a bootstrap. We've never raised a cent. We're up to 20 full-time employees now between Israel and New York.
Can you share some numbers on the application, rankings?
Sure, yeah. We've been, so our first product, which is Facetune, has been the #1 ranked paid app in over 100 countries by now, both on iOS and Android. On Android, we launched in July, and it got within the week to the #1 paid category in 113 countries in the first week. We've made almost $6 million out of Facetune to date. It's been both Apple's and Google's best of 2013 and 14. it's been a wild ride, and
Nice.
there's more to come.
Thanks for joining us, Itai.
Thank you.
Peter from Apollon, based in Minsk. Peter, can you tell us what Apollon does and what you do there?
My name is Peter, and I'm a co-founder and chief strategy officer for Apollon. Apollon is a mobile app development provider. We developed numerous popular consumer applications, such as Weather Life, Emoji Keypad, Speak and Translate, Notepad Plus, and many others. According to App Annie App Store Analytics, we are a top 10 developer based on iOS App Store downloads in October, September, and a number of months before. And last month we were acquired by MindSpark, an operating business of ISC. And ISC is famous for properties such as Vimeo, Match.com, About.com, and others.
How many employees?
100.
Did you raise any money from VCs?
No, we haven't raised, we are bootstrapped.
Nice. And you just sold to IAC.
Correct.
Congratulations. And so Apollon is one of the top 10 most downloaded companies on iOS worldwide ever, right? I think I saw that a few months ago.
That's correct. Amazingly, among companies such as Facebook and Apple themselves.
I think you have more downloads than Disney, right?
Yes.
That's quite an achievement.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Peter, for joining us. And we have Nicolas from BlaBlaCar. Nicolas, can you tell us what BlaBlaCar does and what you do there?
Yes, I'm Nicolas. I'm a co-founder of BlaBlaCar. So BlaBlaCar is a pretty simple service. That's what you could call what we call city-to-city ride sharing. So essentially, it's a marketplace between drivers and passengers. As a driver, you would go on BlaBlaCar and you would say, hey, I'm driving from, say, Paris to Brussels. I have 3 empty seats in my car. And you offer those empty seats to passengers going the same way. And as a passenger, you go on BlaBlaCar and you book those empty seats, just like you would book a train ticket or a plane ticket or a bus ticket. So we started that here in Paris, actually. We started that in 2006. And we expanded pretty quickly all over Europe, right? So today we have 9 offices, even though it's HQ'd in Paris. We have about 200 people in those 9 locations. And in terms of community, BlaBlaCar is over 10 million members across Europe, Russia, more recently Turkey. And what we track actually is not so much like how many members we have, but how many people actually use the service every month. And today we carry over 2 million people on BlaBlaCar every month, which is like 2 or 3 times what the Eurostar carries between Paris and London, for example.
And you just raised, I think, a massive round of funding.
Yeah, so I guess unlike the other guys, we raised for 2 or 3 companies. So we raised over $100 million from Axel, Index, Isai, and LeadEdge in New York.
What are you going to do with that money?
So I get, it's a different model. I mean, the model we have is first to expand. I mean, it's first to create usage to make sure people actually value your product, use your product, and later on we go and monetize, right? So the focus we decided to have was not to have like a sort of very sort of slow, profitable growth, was to really create like a massive European footprint as a first step, and then a massive global footprint, which is what we're doing now, and then later on to monetize. So clearly, if you want to do that, I mean, if you want to do that fast, you need to fundraise. So it's a typical sort of VC-backed model where you need to fundraise, create a massive footprint, create value, and then over time you extract value.
Good. So who on this panel is mobile only? Just the 2 of you.
Yeah, we at Apollon are mobile only. Some of our apps have so much users and potentially data that we eventually might want to venture out into outside of mobile-only space, but for now, we are mobile-only.
We're also mobile-only for the time being, although there have been inquiries about web-based applications with our technology. But really, we founded this company because we saw a need to bring the cutting-edge technology for image processing to mobile, which wasn't really being done. There's a bit of an optical illusion, if you will, right? No pun intended. A lot of apps in that space, but not many research-based companies that are doing this. I should have mentioned maybe that our founding team has 4 computer science PhDs, which is this is our expertise. So we're very, very focused on mobile.
Okay. And I think Nordius and BlaBlaCar, you guys became mobile first. You started on the web and pivoted to mobile, right?
Yeah, so maybe I'll go. I mean, we started desktop, right? So the first product in the early days was only desktop. Today, we still have quite a bit of usage on desktop. What we're actually doing now is when we launch new countries, for example, we launched Turkey a couple of months ago, we launched Turkey as a mobile-first country. So, and in a way, we've done that because that's where the world is going, which is pretty obvious. But we've also done that to like force a DNA change in the company, right? So if you launch a country by saying, well, all we have is a mobile app, essentially you change the DNA of the entire company because that's what you're going to develop on, that's what your marketing is going to go to. So we started to do that like a year ago, and we really push that to the next level right now.
Branko, you started on the web and then pivoted to mobile, right?
Yeah, so we started in the web. We're a 5-year-old company. So fortunately, we made a decision early enough. We're talking about middle 2011 to move or expand to mobile as well. And actually, we were the first guys in the world to put our product cross-platform and to enable the users to pick up where they left off from the laptop or a desktop onto the smartphone. That was a very good decision. We're talking about the days when, well, we did it first, so it wasn't really something everybody was talking about. Some other guys followed, and those that didn't are struggling a lot, if they're even there to struggle. So currently, mobile is the biggest driver for us, both in terms of revenues and users. And we have shifted our strategy to be mobile-first company. So now we design games focusing on devices, but we do not neglect the potential of web because it's still there, and I think it's going to be there for a long, long time.
And Alex, at which stage of your journey to become mobile are you today?
So we very much started on desktop, and the reason we did that was because it seems a little counterintuitive when you talk about being a consumer marketplace, much like Nicolas and BlaBlaCar, to not go mobile first. But our power users are our supply base, and we were not sure in the beginning, and actually the data played out, whether cleaners would have a mobile. Lots of them had dumb phones, and so we actually built a text, sounds really odd now, but a text-based product. And we moved them, and we saw the usage in 1 year rise as people mass kind of smartphone adoption, and now actually 95% of all of our cleaners have smartphones, and that's their primary way of accessing the internet, so they don't have a laptop at home. So in terms of supply base, we're very much mobile first, and we don't get very much desktop usage. But then, bizarrely, we get much more desktop usage from consumers because most consumers decide that they want to book a cleaner when they're sitting in their office at work, not when they're riding the metro home in the evening. So we put a lot more effort into supply, but our consumer app has been released in just a couple of weeks. But we are web-enabled, so it's kind of the same.
Perfect. So we have two mobile-only entrepreneurs, two companies who started on the web, who became mobile first, and one company who was big on desktop and about to become a mobile-first company. Question for you, Branko. If I had to start a software company myself, Belgrade in Serbia might not be the place I would think of first to start my company, but this is a choice you did 5 years ago. So how is it to start a software company in Serbia?
Well, it's much easier now than it used to be because there is some traction. Not only in Serbia, all of Europe is, I think, changing and transforming into becoming way more entrepreneurial than before. The same goes for my country and hometown. The challenges 5 years ago were that you wouldn't get much support, mostly from anybody, friends and family to anybody else, because it was a very new, risky thing to start a startup, especially if you're like me and a Microsoft guy, because in Europe people tend to like this long-term or forever corporate jobs, especially if you're moving through the ranks fast. Then people think you're crazy if you're quitting that and starting something that is probably going to fail. So there was no support. That's kind of changing now because there are success stories. There was no money as well.
I mean, no VC money, right?
No VC money. Now there is.
Nothing.
Now there is. So there is some funds either sponsored by EU or actually the real VCs. So that's also kind of changed. So actually now I would definitely go there. 5 years ago, there was pros and cons.
And Peter, same thing for Minsk. How is it to start a software company building mobile apps in Belarus?
Actually, starting a company in Minsk was a good decision because we have lots of talented developers in Belarus. At least 20,000 people are employed in IT. And most of these people, they work for established IT outsourcing companies. And the next stage of professional development for these developers is to join the product development company, which is doing their own thing and can make a difference. And secondly, there's a high-tech park in Belarus, which is a tax initiative for Belarusian IT company. So members of this high-tech park, they don't need to be physically located in a geographic area, but can be located anywhere in Belarus and enjoy solid tax benefits. So the government supports companies such as ours.
What are the other big software companies in Minsk today?
Actually, quite a few. For example, there's Wargaming.
Wargaming, yeah.
Which is one of the best game development companies in the world. Viber has their offices there as well. There's Apollon and there's Sportcom. And I'm sure we will see more names coming out of Minsk, Belarus.
Itai, you live in New York, but most of the company is in Tel Aviv. How is it to start a company in Tel Aviv? People say it's the next big thing, it's the new hotspot in EMEA. Can you tell us about it?
Sure. So our company is a little different because it's in Jerusalem, not in Tel Aviv per se. Close enough, though, about an hour away. So I think it's kind of well known by now that there's a lot of tech companies coming out of Israel. There's a whole bunch of them listed on the NASDAQ. I think I read once actually more than any other place than the United States, which is quite unusual for a country of 7 million people. There's a lot of innovation going on that's being driven by need, frankly, and by market conditions inside of Israel, since those are like amazing opportunities. There's also a lot of technology strength coming from the military, from specific units that are very technical in nature. I think we're not an exception to that. I would say it's very competitive for talent. Maybe it's kind of like getting to where the Valley and New York are in terms of competition. Salaries are still different from the Valley, but it's definitely competitive. And I think the most interesting thing that's happening there now is the scope of the ambition of people. That I think it used to be that people kind of started companies and sold them at earlier stages, and I think we're seeing more and more companies that want to go all the way, want to build like big, globally reaching businesses. And mobile, to my mind, which has kind of thrown a curveball at the entire game, is a big part of this because you can actually do it now.
I think what's interesting about the three of you is that you don't necessarily care about your local markets. You don't care about the Israeli market, right? Same thing for you, Peter, and you, Branko. You have global ambitions. What about you, Nicolas? BlaBlaCar was started in France 10 years ago, something like that?
Yeah, so we started the company about 10 years ago. Then there was like a very sort of slow start, and we had the first employee actually in the first tiny office in 2009. So the real, I would say, scaling phase of the company is like maybe 5 years, right? So even though it's a 10-year-old company, and we started out of France, right? So the initial market was France, and if you think of what we do, we end up being a very local marketplace, right? Because we need like drivers and passengers that tend to do domestic trips, so that tend to, wherever you build like that in Germany or in France, you're going to be stuck in one country. So it was always an issue for me of like, how do we get out of that, right? How do we not become a French company, but how do we become a European company? And I always looked at actually two countries in Europe, one being, or in Europe in a wide sense, one being Israel, and the other one being Sweden, because you see that these countries have always been very good at building these sort of global companies out of Europe. And the main reason is that they realized pretty quickly that Israel, as you just said, Israel is not the market, or Sweden is not the market because it's just too small. And very quickly they just go and expand and they open an office in another country. So we started to do that probably back in 2010, 2011, and it was essentially changing the mindset of the company to thinking that our market has to be Europe, right? We have to think of this market as being Europe. And so it's a challenge, and we go through that, but essentially the moment you do that, you realize actually Europe as a market is a big market, right? So if you think of like cars, for example, more than a third of the cars are in Europe. So it's 250 million cars in Europe, as many cars as in the US. If you look at smartphones, if you look at internet consumption, if you look at e-commerce consumption, it's pretty much as big, if not bigger, sometime in Europe than in the US. The issue we have as European companies, and the issue we had at the beginning was, how do you tackle the European market? How do you make this fragmented market a single market? So essentially what we've done is we decided to expand pretty early, before we started to monetize, before we proved the business model. And we've done that by setting up local teams in every country. So we have one in Spain, Italy, Germany, UK, Poland, and so on and so on. And we've also done that by acquiring companies doing the same thing we've done, which was kind of an unusual strategy for a startup. So it's kind of strange when you're a 15 or 20 people company to say, well, I'm going to start like acquiring companies. It sounds a bit weird, but actually it's a great way to expand faster, right? So you just essentially built up a bigger footprint pretty quickly. So we've done that from 2011 to 2014. And today, we managed to become essentially #1 in every country in Europe where we operate. And once you've done that, which in a way we've done recently, we've just managed to do that this year in 2014, what's interesting is then you can expand your ambition. And you can say, well, we're not a French company, actually, we're a European company, which happens to be HQ'd in Paris, and now we want to go global. And that's how we raised more money, and that's how we went into Russia, Turkey, and more countries.
And 100% of the development team is based in Paris, right?
Yeah, so essentially what we do is we have some core functions we keep in Paris. So today, product, technology, finance, admin is mostly centralized. But then we decentralized marketing, communication, biz dev. So all of that is essentially within the local teams. So what we decided to do is to give, like, in a way, lots of autonomy and lots of power to these local teams. So that, and that's kind of a requirement, because if you want to tackle the German market, or never mind Russia, you're not going to do that with a team in Paris. You're not going to do that with a team in London. I mean, especially if you're a consumer-facing product, very quickly you need to understand how Germans, Italians, Russians, Turkish people are going to consume BlaBlaCar, which is a bit different from the way they would consume it in France. So all the marketing firepower, communication, biz dev, and so on is done locally in these local offices.
Alex, Hassel is on fire. I'm a big fan. I'm a big user. You raised some money. You just opened France, I think. So 2 questions. Why London? And how did you get there, to that stage of growth, I mean, hyper growth that you're going through right now?
So London, because, I'm sorry, I've got a really croaky voice. I sound quite mannish this morning. Well, obviously we were living and working in London at the time, and I think I'd say a couple of things. I think, first of all, we never thought about starting a technology company. So when we started Hassel.com at the end of 2011, beginning of 2012, and we were a different entity called Teddle then, first of all, none of us knew how to program or code. Facebook, Google Campus, any of those kind of names hadn't arrived in London. There was no such idea about Tech City. All we knew is we had this idea, and we knew that the best way to achieve that idea was to build some technology to aid it. So that's kind of what we went out and did. So it wasn't like a conscious, I'm going to start a startup. You know, I want to kind of get into this movement that seems to be sweeping Europe. So we kind of did that through trial and error, and we failed. The first business, first time out, failed because we were not focused, and you learn lots of things on that journey. But then when we hit upon cleaning, we saw lots of people were coming to the site and searching. One in 4 people were searching for a cleaner. And so we realised there was a gap in the market, and we tore down the existing product, rebuilt it over Christmas and New Year, and relaunched it in 2013. And it was literally night and day. There was entrepreneurs often talk about an inflection point, and it's the bit where you stop feeling like you're pushing water uphill, and actually it starts free-flowing downhill, and you start to sleep at night again. And that really happened to us, and so we knew we were onto something. And then from there on out, we grew about 60% month on month for that whole year. And And I remember us having this conversation going, well, it's cleaning. No one's going to give us any money for cleaning. Why would anyone give you any money for cleaning? It's not very sexy. So we were kind of like, right, well, in that case, let's go for profitability. So we actually broke even before we went out to raise money. And the only reason we went out to raise money is we felt like, well, we've got product market fit. If we can grow 60% with no money, what could we do with money? And so that's why we went out to raise money. And we'd had some angel money, and we went to VCs, and that kind of story's already been written about. But the one thing I think we all share sitting on this stage as European entrepreneurs is this is not America. For good, and that's a good and a bad thing. But we do not have a large, homogenous landmass with the same language, the same currency, the same bylaws, the same regulation. So we're always forced to think internationally from day one. So we knew after London what markets look like London. If this works in London, what looks like London? And we tested a UK market, and then we went internationally and we tested an international market. So I think we have a harder job in Europe, but actually it's harder in a good way, because it forces us to be leaner and more dynamic and take more risks from the outset.
And Alex, you have big competitors, a lot of American companies who
knew they'd come up.
who raised a lot of money. They are being extremely aggressive in Europe right now. How do you feel about it? Do you think it's good for you to be a European-based company?
So I think two things are going on there, if you don't mind, and I'll be quick because I don't want to hog the mic. First of all, everyone's looking at Uber and thinking that's the only way that these things are done, and I fundamentally don't agree with that. I think, it's been done that way in Uber, but I think that is an outlier. It's an extreme case. I think, second of all, it depends where you sit on the theoretical spectrum of what's going on in the marketplace. If you believe that this is a first-to-market, winner-takes-all land grab, then you need to raise a boatload of money and you need to go really, really quickly. If, however, you believe that this is not a commodity play, that it's all about depth, relationships and trust, then actually what you need to do is you need to launch quickly, don't get me wrong, but you need to go deep into those markets and you need to own each market you're in. It's very easy to set up a local landing page, get a handful of cars or cleaners or whatever that might be, and say you have a business in that city. It's much, much harder to start seeing people referring you on, because I can make booking a cleaner as easy as 1, 2, 3, which we have done. But if the end product is not something enjoyable, if you don't like that cleaner or feel that she's done a good job, and it's the same with babysitters or gardeners or any of those types of services, you won't use that product again. And so I subscribe to the second methodology, and that is not because I haven't raised as much money as my competitors. I don't like to be hooked on the VC drip. So again, we will go to break even, or at least that's what we're planning to do, and own the markets that we've chosen to be in.
Thanks. Branko, you have achieved what we call in the world of gaming a grand slam. A grand slam is when you're top 10 grossing app worldwide on Facebook, iOS, Android. This is what every gaming company is dreaming of. And that's very significant revenues. Can you share your daily revenues?
I prefer not to.
Okay, weekly? So how do you become a top 10 grossing app on every gaming platform from Serbia without any external funding? How did you do that?
You don't sleep at night. That's a good recipe.
You got fat as well. Did you get fat?
I did some sports. So I think actually that's got something to do with what you mentioned briefly, like the comparison between Europe and US, or maybe even like the rest of the world. So I think Europe is very, very sexy, way sexier than other continents. I mean, I don't know if this is politically correct, but like the creativity, design, if you look at fashion, architecture, I mean, all of this creative food, exactly, hedonism. I think the root of hedonism is in Europe. So all of these things come from here. And Europe also has traditionally a very strong engineering background. And then when you mix these two, you get, for example, like sexiest and best cars in the world, which are all from Europe. And you also get, for example, games. So currently, if you take a look at the top 5, top 10, top whatever mobile gaming companies or games, you're going to see that majority of those actually come from Europe. That's where Europe is leading. And what helps that is also something Alex mentioned, which is diversity. I think Europeans understand diversity way better than most of the other folks around. Because if I take a look at my country, Serbia, we've got 4 religions and basically 7 different roots of languages, 500 kilometers from Belgrade, which is the capital where I live. So let's say Bulgarian and Serbian are similar, they're Slavic, but then like Greek and Albanian and Hungarian and Romanian, I mean, there's nothing similar there. So diversity plus the sexy, plus the engineers helped us get where we are. We have users in every single country in the world, and we have customers in every single country.
What is your biggest country in terms of user base?
So it's a race between basically Indonesia, Thailand, and Turkey. But it's really what matters is the size of the country. So these countries are relatively big. So if you like arrange the population of a country and their passion for sports, for example, you would get our list. So Germany is strong, UK is strong, France is strong.
Thanks, Branko. Itai, the story of Facetune is quite amazing. I think you launched the app and you became #1 paid app in 70 countries in like a week or 2. So how did it happen? Because don't take it bad, but you don't really have marketing experts in the company, right? The company was a bunch of Israeli PhDs, really technical people building an app. Mm-hmm. So how did you manage to do what a lot of companies are trying to do every day with a lot of funding and a lot of marketing experts?
Yeah, so I think it's a testament to the size of mobile and to what happens when you achieve product market fit in mobile. It's amazing to see, right? Some things in life still are a meritocracy, and with products, that's the way it is.
So you think the best products win on mobile?
I think it's a big part of it, yes. But the second thing is we did not have marketing experience, but I think there are a lot of misconceptions about marketing. Marketing is no longer Don Draper on Madison Avenue, right? Marketing is becoming more, it's closer to bond trading with a Bloomberg terminal when you're running hundreds of campaigns across the world at any given time, right? I mean, and having a bunch of very analytically oriented people with analytical backgrounds is actually quite useful for this landscape. In addition, the fact that everything is new, right? Our company is less than 2 years old. We launched in the beginning of 2013, not long after things like Facebook mobile app install ads came into the world. When there's innovation and things are changing, that means there's less expertise, and you can become the expert, right? There's a nice saying by the first Prime Minister of Israel, Ben Gurion: experts only exist for things of the past, right? Like you don't have expertise about new stuff, so you can become the expert. That being said, it wasn't easy, right? Our CMO, Nir, which I think you're familiar with, used to get up at, in the first months, he used to get up at 2 a.m. Every day to manage like the marketing campaigns for months. Because you're working globally, right? You're working in all the countries in the world, and you're managing these massive multi-channel marketing campaigns. So that was a big part of growing. But it starts with the product.
Peter, how do you become the top 10 most downloaded company of all times on iOS from Minsk?
I fully agree with Mark and Itai on this one. It all comes down to talented developers and artists working together under a supervision of executives that know what they're doing. So for us, back in 2007 or 2008, a friend from California came and showed the first iPhone, and it was so much amazed that we decided to immediately build something for it. So back then we created the checkers game, where players could play against one each other or a computer. And it got published on Apple Web Store, a predecessor of Apple App Store. And it got immediately popular, crashed our servers. Apple featured it in many of the categories. So by that time, we knew that we could create our own apps, and those have chances to become popular. And with time, we went after mainstream industries, but always created products that we would use ourselves. So, for example, with Weather Live, I was in process of selecting a panel for smart home management, and the one that I liked costed 6 or 7 times more than the cost of an iPad, and the weather application on the panel was so ugly that I just decided to build our own. And if you think about it, what is the most natural way of learning weather conditions? It is by looking outside of the window. So that's exactly what we did. We display beautiful weather animations, just showing real-time weather conditions on the user screen, day and night, sun or rain. And when we uploaded this application to Apple App Store, it immediately became popular worldwide.
And what is your most popular application today?
There's a number, but we're most proud of Weather Live.
Did you try to raise any money when you started the company, when you had that application, or did you consider that there was no way to get funding for a utilities kind of app business in Belarus?
That's a good question. Being in Belarus, far away from tech hubs, it's challenging to raise capital.
Especially on that kind of business, right?
Yeah, and secondly, we believed in what we are doing, so we kept reinvesting the profits back into the business, kind of putting our money where our mouth was. So it turned out to be a pretty great investment strategy for ourselves.
Good for you. Nicolas, Alex, question for you. So do you think, and just like Hassel, you have a lot of competitors in the US with big money, big international plans. Do you think you can build a $1 billion company or $1 billion+ company from Europe? When you look at what's happening in the US, what's happening at your competitors, how do you feel about that? You think it's a competitive advantage or a discount to be based in Europe?
Yeah, so actually it's funny because we don't really have competitors in the US. So sometimes we get confused, or at least what we do, ride sharing is getting confused with what Uber is doing in the US, and Uber is attracting obviously lots of money, lots of attention. What they do is it's really inner city ride sharing. So it's really about competing with taxis in a way or expanding the taxi market. What we do is city to city ride sharing. So it's really about like a normal guy, a normal driver sharing his car, driving between Paris and Brussels, Munich to Hamburg, Madrid to Valencia. So it's completely different as a use case. It's completely different as a market. So actually, no one is doing that in the US, which is interesting because initially it was really a challenge. And it was really a challenge because as a European company, when you try to raise money and you try to start, people look at the US as a proxy for, is it going to work? Has someone done that in the US? Is someone already back in the US? And back in like 2009 and 2010, when we were doing like the first seed rounds and Series A round, people looked at the US, and especially, remember 2009 was not like now. I mean, 2009 was post-Lehman Brothers, no one was investing, it was just really hard to get money. And people looked at the US and thought, okay, no one is doing this thing in the US, it doesn't work in the US, it's not going to work in Europe. So you guys should get a real job and just give up. And so for quite some time, actually, it was not having a competitor in the US was an issue, almost. But then you realize it's a real advantage, right? Because we've been able to build today this pretty massive footprint of usage all over Europe, in a way under the radar of US companies. I mean, today we're probably not under the radar, but for quite some time, actually, we've been able to build a company under the radar. And we get to a point which I think is quite interesting, where essentially we manage. I mean, we took a bet like 2-3 years ago. We made a choice to go European and to expand, as I said, like in all these European countries. And today, actually, as a European company, we can go and raise, as we did this year, like $100 million. not going into the US. And that, I think that's kind of new. I mean, if you go back like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the only way to raise that kind of money was to say, I have an entry plan into the US. I mean, I'm going to go and set up shop in San Francisco or New York. And today we can do that with European VCs and also with US VCs actually, by saying, actually my plan is not to go to the US anytime soon. My plan is to go to Russia, to Turkey, to emerging markets essentially. And today you can find people backing you to do that. So to me, that's a big change from 5 years ago. So to wrap it up, I mean, yeah, today I think it is possible to build companies from Europe if you think of Europe as being your market as a step one.
Alex, do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Nicolas has hit the nail on the head there. That I think the European tech market is maturing at an astounding rate. And you can see that in anecdotal evidence, like Nicolas's ability to raise 100 million relatively easily in Europe from European investors. We raised a $6 million seed round, Series A round, which at the time made headlines because they were like, how have these women raised all this money? And it was because, most seed rounds in Europe were like $1 or $2 million, and we were able to raise 6. And now that's actually quite common. So I think we're growing up much, much quicker than we were previously. But you were still behind because now you get to the B and C levels, and you're still scratching around in Europe for those types of funds that can do that level. And you're certainly, I think the biggest challenge we have as a landmass, if you will, is talent and also negating the various regulations of each company, of each country. And if we can handle both of those things, I think we've got absolutely a chance to build a billion-dollar company. I wouldn't be as bold as to say that I can do it. I'm going to give it a good go, but I think Nicolas's company is well on its way.
So we have 3 minutes to go, and I still have a lot of questions. So I'm going to ask you a few flash questions, and you can only answer with one word or maybe one line. IPO or acquisition? I'm going to start with you. I'm sure you think about that all the time. One word. No explanation. You can pass.
Yeah, I mean, probably
one word.
IPO is only on one word, right? So IPO.
Good. Alex, IPO or acquisition? One word.
IPO.
Branko, when are you going public?
None is not an option. None of the above. Okay, IPO.
Itai.
He stole mine. It's neither.
Okay, Peter, you've already answered that question.
For us, it's done the localization.
iOS first or Android first? You start.
We were iOS first, so historically we got way more popular on iOS. But we do realize that Android is super popular as well, and we're catching up on this front. Our apps has become popular on Amazon App Store Marketplace already, and we're working on porting our key apps on Google Play as well.
Itai, one word, iOS first or Android first?
We started iOS first. Depends on what you're doing, though.
Branko?
Both.
Alex?
50-50.
I guess for us, more and more Android in new markets.
What is the next big country for you guys? Everybody talks about Brazil as the next big thing. Is it Brazil, China, India, Russia?
All of the above, actually, for us. Yeah.
Alex?
If I could, just a wish list. Asia.
Branko?
Same.
We should get married.
We sell to all of the above. I think mobile is kind of blurring the lines if you're in our line of business.
Agree, we're chasing them all.
If you had to invest in one company right now, which is not your company, which company would it be? One company name. We have 1 minute.
Facebook.
Thanks.
Because I use this app daily and I cannot stop doing so. This pretty much explains everything.
Excellent.
The real interesting opportunities are usually confidential, but I think there are very interesting things happening in the insurance markets. And again, that mobile has the potential to change those as well.
Branko, one company you would invest in?
Oculus, but you already bought it.
Alex?
I'm probably out of vogue, but I would invest in BioBean, which is paid to pick up coffee waste. So paid to pick it up and then paid for the energy they generate from it.
Nicolas, final word.
I would probably try to invest in all these guys that never raised money because I'm pretty impressed with that, actually. So.
Good. Guys, thank you very much for this panel. I hope it was interesting, but certainly enjoyed it. Thanks a lot for coming, and all the best for the rest. Thank you very much for coming as well, and see you soon. Bye-bye.